Hello, I'm Nadine Bustos. Thank you for joining our fireside chat. This is a great way to hear directly from your peers. Today, our discussion will focus on moving to iManage Cloud, the journey, experiences, and insights and lessons learned. To share his story and experience, and he's actually done this twice, I'm delighted to be joined by Dave Meltzer, Director of IT from Greenbaum Law. Dave, thank you so much for joining us to share your story. To start off, could you please share a bit about your background?
Thank you for letting me be here today, Nadine. I joined Greenbaum, Rowe, Smith and Davis as the Director of IT in July of 2018, and I've been in the legal vertical for about 25 years. This is, as you had mentioned, with Greenbaum, my second uplift to the cloud with iManage.
Great. So you are very familiar. You're no stranger to this process. So before moving to iManage Cloud, what was the firm using?
Back in 2018, we had an on-premise iManage system, which was a couple of revisions behind. In addition, the OS on those servers was also a couple of revisions behind. There was no redundancy, and we were supporting two different sites with this configuration. So we were in need of some hardware and software upgrades going into it, and that's basically how I began my directorship at Greenbaum.
Right. I think that a lot of clients I talk to, they're at the point where they either need to do an overhaul of their infrastructure or upgrade the client. And usually that's the beginning of these types of discussions. So when the topic of moving to iManage Cloud comes up, the feedback I hear is, well, Nadine, why? Everything's working. We're happy. Nothing's broken. Why move? I'm curious, what was the motivation for your firm to move to the cloud?
So for us, about 2 to 3 months into my joining Greenbaum Rowe, we had a 13,000 volt transformer blow in the basement of our building. When that happened, it took out power to the building for several days. Because it was such a large transformer, the question was it the building's responsibility? Was it the electric company's responsibility to replace it? So while that battle ensued, our firm was offline. And as I had mentioned earlier, this was a single installation supporting more than one site. So even though our other sites had power, those attorneys also were unable to work during that time. So once that was resolved 3 or 4 days later, the firm challenged the IT department to architect a system where that kind of downtime would not recur. And the only realistic way that that can happen is with a cloud-based architecture. And that was really one of the largest motivations of going to iManage. Now, full disclosure, there were others. As I had mentioned, we had OSs that were kind of long in the tooth and ready for upgrades. We had iManage software revs that needed upgrades. So we had a perfect storm and a golden opportunity to basically sell a cloud uplift to our upper management and get that project done and get the attorneys the resilience and the business continuity that they wanted.
You're not alone, actually. As disastrous as an event as a power outage, I have heard of similar stories, whether it was a power outage or a hurricane or some other compelling event that sometimes is the catalyst to move a project like this forward. So you mentioned having internal discussions, and actually, this is a point that I'm asked about a lot. Nadine, I get the concept, but really I have to sell it upwards. What was that experience like?
Well, for us, we have a technology steering committee, and they were the first parties that I met with, and I explained the vision of going to a cloud-based architecture. And of course, with that, you have the initial questions regarding security. Um, that is paramount for a law firm. You don't want your documents in a position where they can be hacked by a third party. You want them encrypted. You want complete and total governance. over that, and plus there are compliance frameworks that you need to deal with as well. So for me, I needed to put the firm's mind at ease that yes, the documents will be encrypted at rest, they will be encrypted in transit, and incidentally, those were things we were not doing with our on-prem system. Our on-prem system was incapable of hardware encryption on the SAN. So this was a natural evolution. Um, and the fact that iManage also has redundant data centers makes the business continuity aspect of that also a tremendous selling point. Um, when you couple all of the security, the business continuity, and then look at a cost model for us, we realized that if we were to replace all of our on-prem systems and purchase new on-prem systems for our redundant locations so that they can continue to work and implement the software and hardware to synchronize all of that, plus the cost of the iManage licensing and the OS licensing, all taken together. It was much more cost effective to go with an iManage cloud-based model as opposed to redundant on-prem systems. And one of the wonderful things about all of this is that, again, iManage is investing in security that we can't afford. So for us, if the systems are on-prem and we get hacked, that's on us. If the systems are in the cloud and iManage gets hacked, well, it's a lot more law firms than just us. So there is also a transference of the reputational damage risk from Greenbaum to iManage, and that was also a tremendous selling point in all of this.
Yeah, a couple of themes that just, thank you so much for sharing that. A couple of themes that just came up that will, will resonate with the audience, law firms and organizations, because I hear it a lot. Compliance, security, and then being able to meet the needs of their clients that are asking for these types of measures to be put in place, that to take on a project like that in terms of resources and investment is huge, is overwhelming. So I applaud you in your efforts and success in being able to show the value and overall picture of what a migration looks like in terms of their ROI overall. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the migration process. That is often a question in folks' minds is, what does it take? How long? What type of disruption should we expect?
So again, I've done this twice. The first time was several years ago where the uplift to the cloud process was fairly new. And I can say between then and now, the iManage team has um, improved the process tremendously. They have dotted their I's, they have crossed their T's, they know exactly what questions to ask, they know exactly where to look for all of the gotchas. So for Greenbaum, we had a very simple infrastructure, meaning we didn't have any applications or scripts that were directly reading or writing to the iManage databases. And we had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 6 million documents in one database. So the uplift for us, we copied all of our data over to a very large USB drive. We sent that to the iManage team and they seeded our cloud platform. And then we did rolling weekly robocopy scripts just for deltas. And the weekend of the go live, we uploaded those deltas directly to iManage along with a copy of our database. They rolled everything in. And as far as the database and the documents being placed into the cloud and uplifted, that part was absolutely seamless. It took almost no effort from the IT team at Greenbaum. For us, the larger problem was, well, not a problem, but we had to make sure that all of our users were on a specific revision of the FileSite client, which we continue to use to this day. And we had to make sure that we were able to capably deliver the registry keys that would configure that FileSite client to look to the cloud come Monday morning when our attorneys got in. And that can be done in a number of different ways, group policy objects or login scripts. We chose the login script route. For us, it was just the simplest avenue to have that affected.
So let's talk about go live, because that's also another concern. What's going to happen to my end users when they walk in on Monday morning? So I'm an end user. I go in, I sit down at my desk, and I boot up my system. Tell me about some of the feedback that you might have received at the time.
So the way the uplift proceeded for us, it happened on a Saturday. A Saturday morning, and we had messaged this through some emails for about 2 weeks, and we let all the users know that the system was going to go offline Saturday morning, and we anticipated about 12 hours of downtime. And that's what we had allocated. And the iManage team actually completed the task and had everything done in about 6 to 8 hours of total downtime. So we finished ahead of schedule. And when the users started work on Sunday and Monday, for that matter, they couldn't tell that they weren't on premise. The one difference for them, and this is something that in hindsight we could have done a little bit better, we did not enable ADFS single sign-on. So initially, the users, when they launched their Outlook client, they had a secondary login. But aside from that, once they had entered their password, everything really was as seamless as it was on-prem. They couldn't tell that they were in the cloud. And in fact, I even had a few attorneys contact me and say, well, hey, did we actually move to the cloud? Because the performance is as good as it was on-prem.
Right, and I've heard that, and that is a concern. Uh, Folks have in their mind, if I move to the cloud, everything's going to slow down. It's going to be too disruptive for our end users. So I'm happy to hear that feedback.